Hi everybody, my name is Jaden Eric Bodwin. Thanks for joining me once again on another product review video. I wanted to take a little bit of a break from some of the music videos we've been doing, change it up, spice things up. And I'm very happy to talk about this lens, which is a Canon 50mm f1.8 STM. And it's so fantastic, and it's made of plastic that people call it the fantastic plastic. So it's an awesome lens, one that probably every Canon photographer has come into contact with at some point, whether they've owned it or rented it or, borrowed it from a friend, something like that. If you're just starting out, this is a fantastic lens to look at because it looks great. It produces fantastic images, and if you only have a kit lens, then this is really going to up your game. We're going to talk about the specs. We're also going to talk about the build design, what goes on inside here. And we'll look at, most importantly, some pictures with this. I think it's useful to talk about all the specs of it, but ultimately, what does it produce? So, great lens, but as I said, I don't think I'm ever going to use this thing again. So, stay tuned to find out why. Before I tell you why I'm probably never going to use this thing again, we need to talk a little bit more about this lens. We need to talk about what it does well, what it doesn't do well. We need to talk about how do pictures look, and also, of course, some of the nuts and bolts and specifications about it. So we're going to have some pictures later on to analyze and look at. We can look at some of the things like bokeh, chromatic abrasion, things like that. Before we get into that, what does this camera excel at? This camera is amazing at portraits. It's a fantastic portrait lens, and for the price, you really can't beat it. It's also a fantastic lens for low light or action shots. If you shoot, say, indoor venues, concerts and stuff like that, there's not a lot of light, and that lower F number is going to let you crank up your shutter speed so that you can catch action better. Of course, this lens is a prime lens, which means it can't zoom. You're stuck at 50mm. So if you're in tight spaces where you can't adjust your forward and back motion, then it's going to be a little bit detrimental there. If you're somewhere else, if you're, for instance, on a beach, somewhere where you can move around and there's lots of space, it's amazing because now you can just walk yourself up. But sometimes you don't have that luxury. If you're inside, it's maybe not the best, but as I said, fantastic for portraits, low light, action photography as well. So let's talk about the build specifications a little bit. They're not the most exciting thing, I know, but it's a little bit necessary. This lens is very compact, which is very nice for fitting in your camera bag or even fitting in your pocket. There's a lot of times where I've carried this around and just put it in my pocket, and that's that. Really easy. It measures 69 by 61 millimeters with the caps on. With the caps off, it's only 39 millimeters, which is pretty tiny, really. You can see that if I take those off, it's almost like a pancake. If you are an imperial measurement type of person, 69 millimeters is roughly 2.7 inches, and 39 millimeters is roughly 1.5 inches. It's very light, 159 grams, so as I said, if you're walking around for a long time or you have it on your camera, it's not going to weigh a lot like some of the big telephoto lenses, which get very tiring, and your neck can get really sore if you're wearing a strap and have it on all day. So that's really great. Moving on to the construction of this. It's plastic, it's fantastic plastic. But one of the really awesome things about it, and you probably saw this earlier, is the metal focus ring. So this greatly expands the life of the lens. You don't have to worry about that breaking or anything happening to it. Very durable. As I said, the body is made of plastic, which is a little bit of a bummer. Don't drop it. Don't drop any of your lenses. Just don't drop most things, period. It's a 49 millimeter thread, which you may have to go buy a new filter for, unfortunately. There's also no lens hood that comes with this lens. You can buy them. It does take a lens hood, but you'll have to buy that separately. For the price of this lens, I don't know that a lens hood is necessary, though if you do notice you're getting a lot of lens flares and unwanted glare and that sort of thing, it can really be a beneficial thing to buy. There's also no image stabilization, so you can see on the footage I'm showing here, I'm just holding the camera steady, but it's not very smooth, and as I go forward and back, you'll see that it's a little bit wobbly. Now, one thing that this camera really excels at is the autofocus. The ring on the autofocus on the edge is very smooth. I find I generally never have a problem using it, and the autofocus is extremely fast. We're actually going to head over to my desk so you can watch a little demonstration of just how fast this autofocus is, because it is impressive. Okay, so I'm here with my friends Spider-Man and Venom to show you just how fast this autofocus works. I'm just basically going to be focusing on one and then the other and moving between them, focusing as I go, and I want you to listen for how fast the camera beeps. Every time it beeps, that's when everything's in focus. So, here we go. Oh yeah. Pretty fast, if I do say so myself. I wanted to mention that the camera I'm using right now is the Canon Rebel T6i. It's not the fanciest camera, but it definitely gets the job done. The pictures I'll be showing you later were also taken with this camera. More on the build quality of this thing. Inside we have 6 elements of glass in 5 groups, and that basically means that there's 6 individual slices of glass and they're grouped into 5 units. Each piece of glass is its own unit except for one of them is grouped together. Bigger lenses will have more, smaller lenses will have less, and generally the more glass, the more expensive. Now, in addition to that, the aperture on this 1.8, which is very good, it's very fast. The lowest aperture is f/22, so most of the time you don't need to go above that, but you will start to see some image degradation once you start getting up to, you know, f/16 and that sort of range. It works best at about f4, but even at f2.8 it's razor sharp. So we'll look at some images for that in a little bit. We have 7 aperture blades inside this, and they're all rounded, which gives us nice creamy bokeh. As far as focal distance, this thing can go into 0.35 meters, which is about 13 3/4 inches, and the max magnification is 0.21 times. All in all, this is a great lens. In Canadian, I think I found it for under 120, which is dirt cheap. In America, it's about $100 if you look at Amazon. So very cheap lens, highly recommended. I'm never going to use it again. And I still can't tell you why, because we have to look at some pictures with this lens, take those apart. Some of the things we're going to talk about, the bokeh, we'll look at that. We'll look at the same picture taken at different apertures so you can see how that changes. We're going to look at one thing that most people don't talk about, which is focus breathing. If you're not familiar with this term, it basically means that as you zoom in and out with your camera, you'll get a small but noticeable shift, almost like you're zooming in and out. So we'll look at that as well, because this lens does suffer from it a little bit. In addition to that, we'll just look at the quality, we'll look at the chromatic abrasion, and the sharpness of those photos. So let's take a look at that over on the computer station. Okay, let's check out some of these pictures. Again, these were all taken with a Canon Rebel T6i, as you can see. There's your lens. Basically, we're going to start at 1.8 and work our way towards f/22. So, looks good. I think f2.8 and f4 look the best out of the whole bunch. You can see them there. And then as we move on, f6.3, f11, f16, f22. We'll do the same thing here. I want to zoom in to 100% so we can get a sense of what's really happening. And this is basically the edge between the pencil sharpener and the background. And you can see a little bit of a halo effect that happens when we're at f1.8. And it's reduced quite a lot by f2.8 and f4. It's just super, super sharp. This is great. And the background is still very blurred out. We don't know what's going on, and that's just what we want. Let's continue on. f6.3. Sorry for the fuzz, my camera's not that great, but it's still really sharp. Great, great image. We start to get a lot of fuzz, but it's still quite sharp. And as we approach f22 especially, we can notice that fringing coming back. There, it's still pretty good at f16, but as I said earlier, I wouldn't really go higher than that. So there you go for the pencil sharpener. We'll move on to outside, and these are some lanterns on my porch. So I'm focused on the blue one, obviously, and we'll do the same thing going from f1.8 all the way to f22. Pay special attention to the trees in the background. They'll start to become really in focus as we go up. So f2.8, f4, 6.3, f11, 16, and 22. And at 16, even at 11, you can really start to notice the branches and the detail on the branches. Everything is pretty crisp. So I usually like f11 on this. I wouldn't go too often to f16, and then there's f22 as well. If we zoom into 100% here, you can see everything looks pretty good. There isn't any real abrasion or anything too funny happening. Let's go to 1.8, which we can see. Let's go to where we're focusing on. You can see though that there's a little bit of a purple hue around some of these edges, which it's not super noticeable when you're zoomed out, but it is there a little bit. And still, remember, this lens is under $150, so for this kind of quality, you really can't complain. We'll do one more little set. This is my girlfriend Carissa, just on our porch with the tree in the background. And same thing, same apertures, and we can see again, f4, really, really crisp. Background still just blown up. 2 is good. Let's move on to 6.3. And especially in the eyes, it's just razor sharp still. We'll do a close-up on those in a second, but as you can see, f22, f16, you can really notice the detail on this tree in the background. So let's zoom in. And check out the eye, and remember at 1.8 it's actually not too great, I don't think. You can see some fringing, and it's just not as good, but when we go to 2.8, look at that, that's great. That's just fantastic. Same with f4. Wow. We can zoom in even a little bit more here, and you're still getting really crisp details even on this crop sensor. So 100% looks great. We go on to f6.3, still pretty good. There's no problem here. f11, yeah, I was going to say it looks a little shaky, but my shutter speed's down. I should have upped my ISO, so that's my bad. And here it's probably a little worse, yeah, 25 and 110. So that's my bad, but the other pictures give you a good idea, and surprisingly, at 1/10 of a second, I mean, I'm kind of surprised it turned out that good, because if you look at this line around the cheek, it's, well, impress yourself every day. So there's a bunch of pictures. There's 3 pictures for you, and you can kind of see the different effects of the lens at different aperture settings. I'll give you one more. This is kind of a pensive look, and looks really good. Again, eyes, they're nice and sharp. You can see some of the reflection of our curtains actually. But yeah, the background's there. And this is at f2.8, which looks really good. You can see the strands of hair and everything. So that's very awesome. And it captures light really well. I think that's fantastic. Next up, we'll look at a video that shows some focus breathing really clearly. In this, you'll see on the edges, it looks like we're zooming in ever so slightly. And this is literally because the camera has to shift forward and back a little bit to get things in focus where they need to be. So not terrible, but just something to note. And as I said, this camera's great. For the money, you really can't go wrong. Sorry, I almost forgot to tell you why I'm never going to use this lens again. And as I said, it's an amazing lens. It does a lot of great stuff. For portraits, it's great. You can't get better bang for your buck. No, it's not going to look as good as a $2,000 lens. I mean, most of the time you get what you pay for. But in this deal, I don't think you could do worse. This is great. If you're upgrading from a kit lens, fantastic. It's gonna up your game so much. But why am I never gonna use it again? Well, because I upgraded. I went and got a 24-70 2.8. And for the type of photography that I do, most of it being events like concerts and that sort of thing, this thing is great because I don't always get the luxury of moving back and forth. I need that zoom. Sorry to clickbait you into this, but I hope you have a really nice rest of your day. Go check out some of those music videos if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers, everybody.